So Justin's going to lead today's webinar, but I wanted, before we got into it, I wanted to do a couple of things, just throw a couple of things out there, because all of you are, I'm presuming, I don't know everybody, but I'm presuming all of you will be going into that wretched beast known as the Bureau of Prisons. And when I say it's a wretched beast, it's just because anytime you're separated from your family and the people you love and the people who love you, it's very hard. And we want to help you guys make sure that you're ready and make sure that you understand there is a lot going on in the Bureau of Prisons right now that has never existed before. And what do I mean by that? It's never existed before could everybody mute themselves just to make sure, so that we can get a good recording and distribute this recording later? And everybody keeps, more people kept popping in. So before Justin started this webinar on reputation building, I wanted to give 2 points. Yesterday, the Bureau of Prisons put out a memorandum that interprets how they are going to apply the First Step Act earned time credits, which are of meaning to everybody on this webinar, because it can directly influence on when you finish your obligation, how you can accelerate your time in prison. Separately, it changes things. That just shows the importance of self-advocacy, because there's going to be a lot of litigation in the way the BOP interprets it. In my view, the agency is going to be people that are serving short sentences are not going to get as much benefit as they should get. And what I mean short sentence, and those are BOP terms, right? I mean, I know that a 2-year sentence or a 1-year sentence or a 3-year sentence is all relative. That's a very long time for anybody to be in prison. But when big prison reform legislation comes in, it always takes a lot of litigation before it gets to where it gets to a better spot. And right now we're in this first stage where the BOP has just said, hey, this is the way we're going to interpret earned time credits. I can't explain all of that right now, because that'll be a long webinar, but I want you to know what we're doing. I've reached out to hire 2 more subject matter experts, both of them former BOP officials, people that retired, and we're going to host a webinar today at 3:00. But it's not an open webinar, because they don't want to do it openly, since they're former BOP officials. But we're going to ask them questions on how will the BOP, in practical terms, apply the earned time credits to all people. And now that this rule has been codified and that this memorandum has been distributed, we want to understand that, and we want to publish information that will help you as people that are going inside understand that. So that's one thing we're doing today. If we record the webinar with these guys today, we will then follow up by writing a document that says, hey, this is what we learned, and this is what you can expect, and this is what we think you should be doing in light of what we've learned. Because remember, these earned time credits can significantly accelerate the time that you go to home confinement, or they can accelerate the time that you finish your obligation to the Bureau of Prisons. It's different from the CARES Act. And that's the second thing I wanted to talk about on today's webinar. The CARES Act, I've said it many times, I've written about it many times, is very different from the laws, such as the First Step Act and the Second Chance Act. The CARES Act only exists at the will of the president. He can stop the CARES Act anytime he wants. And so I don't want anybody going into prison with this concept that says, oh, I'm going to serve 25% of my sentence. When do I apply? Because that would be completely inaccurate. Nobody should have that idea. That's why we have these webinars every week. You've got to ask questions so that we can give you honest answers about what happens. We can't change what a judge sentenced you to. We're not lawyers. We're not the court. We can't change anything. All we can tell you is this is what exists. Let's figure out how to advocate our way to get the best possible outcome. And I think it's very important for us to emphasize these things so that at the end of a webinar or during the webinar, you can ask questions and we can respond to you. And if we don't know the answers, we will go out and hire the people to get the answers. And the people that we hire are the people that used to write the policies for the Bureau of Prisons. So if they wrote the policies and they know those policies are bad, they can also tell us, hey, here are ways that people have won. These are things that people have done to help themselves. And we will be providing that information at scale while you're in prison. When I say at scale, it's very important for us to explain what that means. We just don't have the bandwidth to be personal law firm for every person. That we any more than we have to say, hey, that you guys are going into the worst government bureaucracy that exists, as senators tell us, and as the president tells us, and as the former directors tell us, and so on. It is a very complicated bureaucracy, and we've got to know how to advocate for ourselves given what they do. So I just wanted to start off the webinar letting you know these are some things that we are developing, that we are going to be distributing to you in the next week. When we send these complicated things, if you have questions, please don't be mute during the webinar. This is the time to ask us the questions, because what we really don't want to get is when you get into prison, we don't want to have you sending core links messages saying, oh, nobody ever told me that. Oh, I didn't understand that. Or things aren't turning out the way that I wanted them to, right? It's prison. And we have got to figure out how to empower you to help yourself. That's an interactive exercise. And I know that Joseph asks questions. I know that some people have asked questions. Victoria's asked questions. If you have any questions about what we are promising you, what we are delivering to you, these times before you surrender are when you need to ask those questions, so that when you're in there and you're sending us the core links messages, we want those core links messages to be something we can act upon and do. And say, hey, this is what's happening. This is what you need to do. Don't expect that you get there on Monday and by Friday they're putting you in for CARES Act, as some people have written to us, because that's not how this bureaucracy works. We've got to understand it. We want to help you understand it, and we want to give you the tools, tactics, and resources you can use to get the best possible way of getting out early. And that's what I wanted to say during just like this first segment of today's webinar, to encourage you. If you have questions, please ask on these webinars. This is the time for us to be interactive. Now, if you have questions now, I think we can go, or Justin, you're ready to start doing your webinar and you can listen to what Justin has to say. I will be on the webinar the whole time and respond to any questions, but I'm really encouraging our team members to also answer the questions. So does anybody have a question before I turn it over to Justin? Okay, then everybody's on mute. I will be on the webinar the whole time and be available to answer any question, including, I know I've heard some about low security prisons. I'm very familiar with that and can certainly help you understand those things. But let's please let Justin continue. So you can unmute yourself, Justin. I believe you can share your screen and do everything you need.
All right, thank you. So thanks for everyone for joining. At about 7 business schools I've gone to, there's a sign heading into the room that's this famous Warren Buffett quote that says, like, it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. And I know many of us on this call can relate to that. John's on the call. He was a chiropractor. He's going to prison. He's said he'd happy to speak openly and honestly during this call as we learn. So I'm going to share some insights on how to manage a reputation, some horrific mistakes that I made that hopefully you can learn from, debunk some things that I heard while in prison until I spoke to Michael while in prison that really helped me gain some traction. And we all know a damaged reputation or a felony conviction just doesn't impact you. Earlier this morning, I read a lengthy article about a woman who her and her husband was raided by the FBI for some potential Amazon scheme. She landed a new job for $650,000, and 5 days into her job, the employer learned that her husband was under indictment and they immediately fired her. And she's like, well, I didn't do anything wrong, but they didn't want any part of it. So I'm well aware that this conviction just doesn't impact you, but also your family. And to the extent that we can manage it, we want to help. Is there anyone on this call that didn't have a dreaded Department of Justice press release that I know we've all endured? Anyone willing to mention that? And has everyone here had the DOJ press release as a result of their conviction? Scott? Okay. So there's a few things that you can do if these press releases come. Some people do nothing. They just don't care. It has no impact on their life. They may have a business. They have no concern about what people think. Financially, they may be set, and they just don't care. That's pretty rare. I would say that's an anomaly. In my case, I was devastated when I read the release, and I responded really inappropriately, I think, when these releases came out. And I want you to learn from this, because it's easy to be vulnerable when you see these releases, because you fear you may never get a client or build a business because of Google. So one thing that I did that I don't want anyone here to do, a reputation management company reached out to me when I had my first press release when I pled guilty in 2007. And it was a pretty good salesman. He said, you can pay with time or money. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, you can invest time to try to repair your reputation, or you can pay us money today and it can really be fixed in a few weeks. And I was so vulnerable, I paid him $16,000. I'm embarrassed to say, on a credit card. And all they did was lock me into a monthly continuity program. They created a bunch of websites with no content whatsoever, under the idea that it would suppress or push down these releases. In the end, it actually hurt me in front of my pretrial services officer, because she saw all of the releases. When I Googled myself, I saw all of these websites with ridiculous content that made me seem like I was some sort of hero. I looked foolish and dumb. I was embarrassed. Once I recognized it, I immediately pulled it down, and I just reasoned there will never be any way to reconcile or repair my reputation. And I think that began to change once I met Michael. So there are pros and cons to these companies. The pros are it may work for a little while. You may be able to suppress these releases. The cons are it's very expensive, and it's really outsourcing the work, which is not really what we teach here. It's you taking the lead, you creating this content, you doing all you can to demonstrate what you've learned. And that leads to what some of our clients have done. For example, Joseph, talk a little bit about, if you would, I know you created a website in part because you want to work to create a new business. It's helping you stay productive. I know your lawyer likes the website, but how have you felt trying to manage this reputation following these press releases? And you may have another one next week once you're sentenced. I know it's like more to come. Walk us through that feeling of trying to proactively manage your reputation.
A lot of damage control. I had my in-laws just recently found out about it about a month ago. My wife was a little reluctant to tell her whole family. And, there's a lot of shame, of course, a lot of surprise. Everyone can't believe what I did. And the website I've been working on now, it's not live yet, but I love it. I've been able to really write from my heart. My heart does all the writing into everything. And I basically, downloaded Grammarly, and I just voice text everything into Grammarly. I edit it and copy and paste it and upload it. And, every time I get a feeling like I want to express something, or everything that I'm doing, even, since working with you since May of 2021, and getting the website, launched mid last year, it's, I have a lot of content on there. It's not live yet. I'm going to constantly try to improve my image any way I could. And all of the things I've done, is on there. And I'm excited to have it. I'm very happy I have it. I'm so ecstatic I have it, because I don't know what I would do if I didn't. I mean, all it is everyone reading what the DOJ put, and it's not my side of the story. I mean, I don't have my narrative on there or anything, but it's just me, my career, what I've done since getting the call from the SEC, and the video with Michael, very helpful.
So this is, and I'll transition to Scott here in a little bit and talk about his process as well, because I know I filmed a video at a sentencing hearing a couple of days ago, and our client was shaking his head, and I thought the judge was going to yell at him because the U.S. attorney read the plea agreement at the sentencing hearing. And the U.S. attorney said, as the facts state, Your Honor, as the facts state, as the defendant signed, as the defendant signed, and the defendant's there shaking his head like, I disagree with that. And many people who sign a plea may not agree fully with the plea agreement, knowing that it could be the government's version of events. And to the extent that you can try to manage it, you should. So while some don't care and others may hire a reputation management company to try to suppress it, the cheapest alternative, it may take more time, but that time is going to come anyway. So you should begin to build. The best alternative, I think, is somehow working on your own to repair your reputation without outsourcing all of that work. And the goal here isn't to try to sell you on a website. You can get a website made for $12 out of India or Asia, or register a domain and begin to write. That's not the goal here. It's to help you understand, similar to what Micah helped me understand, which is how if you work on something incrementally and daily, you wake up months and years later with a significant body of work. Because when I met Michael in prison, he was doing a lot of writing on michaelsantos.net. And he said, I want to write an article about you. And I'm like, okay, but just don't use my name. Change it from Justin to Matthew. I'm like, don't use my name. And Michael said, well, what's the upside of that? And I'm, well, I don't want people to know I'm in prison. He's like, but everybody knows that you're in, everybody already knows that you're in federal prison. And what will happen on the other side if you haven't begun to address the reality that you're in prison for a financial fraud and that you created victims and you owe restitution? Like, how is ignoring it going to advance your agenda when you're looking to raise money or get a license back or have people trust you if you haven't built this record? And even when he said that to me, I'm like, no, you're crazy. I would never write openly that I was in prison. That was in May of 2008. And it wasn't until October of 2008 that I finally went into his cubicle and I'm like, I think I'm screwed when I go home. I see guys scared to go home. Like, what are they going to do? And he said, I've been having this talk with you since May. So through that suggestion, with Michael's help, we began to chronicle my experience through a daily blog. And even then, people thought that I was crazy because I'm writing about lessons from prison and what I was learning. But of course, that set the stage for the rebuilding of my reputation, career, and that helps lead us here today. So Scott, let me transition to you. When our team discussed with you the idea of managing your reputation, because we had discussed a reputation management company, I think someone had reached out to you or you had contemplated that. To your credit, you said you were willing to do the work. Walk us through how managing your reputation by way of writing every single day while in custody, how that led to your adjustment and perhaps even helped you maybe get out of prison early. But talk about the feeling of being proactive in managing your reputation. Because I want people, whether it's their own website, through a newsletter, through core links that we'll talk about, I want people to know there are things they can do to manage it. So I'd love to hear from you because I think you're a successful case study.
Sure. Thank you. There's really so much to say regarding the idea. I think if you focus on it from the time at prison, it feels exceptionally good to be proactive. Instead of sitting there and bemoaning your situation and your surroundings and complaining about staff and what you don't like about it, you can take action. And if it was a dark, cold Friday night in the winter, or if the AC broke and it was a sweltering hot day in the summer, again, instead of complaining, it's like I'm building towards the future here right now. So I found that to be exceptionally fulfilling. The other part that happened is when I came back home, I was like, am I going to have the same conversation with everybody I run into? How was prison? How was this? How was that? And instead, a few friends found out about the website, a few colleagues, a few former clients found out about the website, and they all started reading it, and everyone was following along on my journey. And when I got back home to Idaho, it was like I was already off the on-ramp and going 80, cruising with everybody. We didn't need to talk about the bad parts of prison. They were really impressed, as I impressed myself with the lessons I learned and the opportunity for reflection. And it sort of helped craft my experience and people's perception of my experience in a way that I hadn't anticipated. So it worked out even better than I had hoped for.
So some of the lessons I convey comes from my time with Michael. After I was writing the blog for like a week or two, I shared some of them with him, and he was supportive, but kind of in a polite way said, there's only so many times you can write how early you get up and what you had for breakfast and how many miles you ran. If you're going to put this out there to the world, I encourage you to do more. And what that did was helped me form a really good reading plan while in prison. So, Joe, I know you're getting sentenced. John, you've already been sentenced. Do you have goals to read a lot of books while you're in custody? Is that something that's of value to you?
Absolutely.
So I wasn't really reading with a plan. And when Michael would review some of these blogs, he was supportive. But then again, he said, oh, how many times are you going to write about the oatmeal and cereal you had for breakfast? That then led to being really productive in prison, because it's like I've shared with the world that I'm going to have this blog. And if I don't follow through on it, I don't look accountable. I say one thing and do another. But then I was concerned like nobody's going to read it because I'm writing about what I'm having for breakfast. So it really helped me develop a good reading plan of reading books that I can then share those insights into blogs, or when I was meeting with my family or writing a probation officer, things that we'll get into here in a little bit. When I'm meeting with my case manager, what I was doing while in custody, because they were actually reading some of the blogs. And my messaging was slightly different from Michael's, who did 26 years. Mine was, hey, if prison camp's meant to reform, it's really working here for me. I'm having a really productive experience. So the blog and having people review it, I then felt like, wow, I'm accountable here. And it really led to reading books with a purpose. But even then, with respect to prison, I would read the books and Michael would say, you read that book, tell me 3 things you learned from it. And I would struggle. So he's like, oh, you read a book, that's great. It's kind of a passive activity. You don't remember anything. It's kind of like watching a movie. So that then led to him encouraging me to read, and I would take notes. And then I can insert those notes into these blogs or letters that I would write home. It just doesn't have to be a blog. You should be writing letters home into your network, not just what you ate and what time you got up, but what you're learning while in prison. And that work can begin to spread. And I found that to be really hallmarks of repairing my reputation and also feeling really productive through prison. So as we talk about reputation management, one thing you'll have to be able to do, I think, if you broke the law, is really tell your story in a way that is believable, that accepts responsibility. Because if you don't do that, if you're blaming the government or a plea agreement you don't feel was right, people are going to expect you to say that or don't believe that you're accepting of responsibility. And that can really work against you. And I think we heard a lot of that while in prison, of people blaming and excusing. So it's got to be the right message if you're going to put it out there for people to see. And in my experience, generally, I made really bad decisions. I accept those decisions, and here's how I'm looking to become better. Does all of that make sense? Okay. Jonathan, if you wouldn't mind indulging, you texted me yesterday that now that you've been sentenced and you're getting ready to go to prison, you don't mind doing a video or sharing some of the insights that accompany this. You've spoken frequently about goals that you have while in custody, whether it's writing or building a new business, potentially joining our team. So what does that look like while you're in prison? Could you see yourself writing? Could you see yourself teaching? Help us understand reputation management while you're in custody.
It's a great question. I'm kind of navigating through all of that at the moment. Learning a lot about what happened, ways I was looking at it that, I should have been looking at it through maybe a different lens. And it really has helped me figure out just how to be, better in business.
So I want to stress to everyone, I won't mention his name, but I had a client who didn't want to do a blog. Great. Didn't want to do a website. Totally fine. But he was concerned over his reputation. And several weeks into his prison term, he said, I don't want to live on this email machine all day because it's kind of a distraction. And I find myself running to the email terminal like I did my iPhone. I just want to get away from it. But what I do want to do is kind of manage and grow a network. So at no expense, it cost him nothing other than his time to write it. Every Monday, he would write a very lengthy article to his wife, Kristen, via core links. And he wasn't even responding to people individually. He didn't want to. He didn't want to do that, but he did want to send out this weekly newsletter to Kristen. His wife, she encouraged friends, family, potential business partners, anyone who had interest in his success. She formed a little newsletter at MailChimp, totally free, costs nothing. But within a matter of, 3 or 4 months, there were more than 400 or 500 people, because it kind of goes viral. It spreads like, hey, Joe's really productive in prison. He wrote a great book review.
Justin, real quick, I just wanted to pop in here. I don't know if you know, but you've got a white screen that you're sharing on the webinar.
Oh, forgive me. Hold on.
Maybe there's a purpose for that, but it's kind of, we want to see you.
Do you see it over here on the left?
Is there a reason that the white screen's on the webinar?
No, I don't know.
Now you're on.
Do you see it? Do you see it now, the MailChimp?
No, you shared the wrong screen. So if you want to share your screen, the way to do that in Zoom, and forgive us for not being better prepared before that, you've got to hit share screen. And then when it pops up, you've got to choose the screen that you want to share. So you probably have a lot of windows on many things open. Make sure you're choosing the right screen, because nobody can see what you're talking about.
Can you see it now?
No, because you're not sharing your screen right now.
One moment.
So you've got to choose it, and then you hit the blue button share, and then we can see MailChimp. So,
okay,
so your readings just in the future, be conscious of that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to mute myself now.
Yeah, thank you. So David said, I don't want a blog or website or anything like that, but I do know that I need to repair my reputation and grow my network. And so every Monday, and you can do all of this, he would send a newsletter with what he did the previous week in prison.
So right now you're sharing the core links window, just so you know.
I know. Thank you. So he would send it via core links, what he did the prior week in prison for free at MailChimp. His wife was sending out this newsletter, and within a matter of months, more than 400 or 500 people were reading it. And it comes back to how productive he felt while in prison, because now he felt like, wow, people are reading this. And it really helped him transition upon his release. What he did at our suggestion was also begin to send some of these writings to his probation officer. So Joseph, you're going to be in prison. John's going to be in prison. Paul, if you're going to be in federal prison, it's one thing to write it. It's very important to share it with all of these people who are going to determine what may happen on probation, higher levels of liberty that you're going to have, permission to travel, things of that nature. I used to run into Michael's cubicle and say, this guy on the track told me I'll never be able to work with felons because I'm a felon. It's a waste of time. What do you think? And of course, we know what happened, because I met with my probation officer the day I left the halfway house, and I had a record of work to give him. I had a body of work to give him. So I'm begging all of you, if you don't want to do a blog, great. If you don't want to do a website, no problem. But there are people who are going to have an influence on what happens to you, from your case manager to people in the halfway house to the probation officer. And to the extent that you can be managing that, I think you help yourself. Okay. And that's something, and Michael sent me a note that I'm very proud to go through right now. So let's talk about that. Michael wrote, it's more important that you have a plan. To find success is the purpose of the plan. Michael, can you touch on that? Because that kind of comes back to our conversation from prison. I don't mind you jumping in to help, please.
Okay, so let me participate as a participant now, rather than as a leader of the webinar. First of all, I want to say I like that you guys are asking questions in the chat. We encourage you to use the chat. There's nothing you can't ask us. There's nothing we won't answer. And I was just responding to a question that we got about whether somebody should respond to write about the crime. Mm-hmm. And my response to that is, you have to follow this principle that we try to teach through all of our work, and which I'm sure each one of you wishes you would have done at the very start of your journey. And that means define success. What is the purpose of what you're doing? Okay. In some cases, yes, it makes a lot of sense to speak about the crime. In my case, I broke the law. I sold cocaine. I was serving 45-year sentence. It made sense for me to acknowledge I broke the law. I made bad decisions, and I'm going to do better, because I could use that as an advocacy strategy, and it still helps me today. Last week on Thursday, I was in Kansas City, Missouri at the regional office presenting to 20 wardens. And one of the comments that I got from them was that, because we're bringing our programs inside of the Bureau of Prisons now. And Scott, incidentally, I was interacting with your former warden when I was there, because it's the North Central region, so she was the warden of Yankton. But one of them said to me, in fact, I could pull up the email, and I will the next time Justin presents. What she wrote to me, she said, "We really valued what you're offering to us as wardens. Most former prisoners who come and talk to us, all they have to talk about is how successful they are and how they shouldn't have been in there in the first place." Right. But the strategy that I have always used is, in my case, it was important to accept responsibility, to say, this is the plan I am creating to make amends. And these are the goals that I've set in place. These are the tools, tactics, and resources that I'm creating to bring validity to what I am saying. And I can use that to get case managers, unit managers, wardens to open opportunities that were available to everybody else, but not everybody else got. So I use that as a tool. And so writing about my crime was important. But let's take somebody else who may not have that commitment to transparency. It's still important to think about, well, why am I doing this? Maybe you want to start a new career, like Justin. When I met Justin, as he said, he was like many other guys that were, that comes into the non-criminogenic people that come into the system and have no concept of why they're there or what they're doing there. And they want to hide under the pillow, and I shouldn't be here. But that doesn't advance the ball. So through questioning, we start saying, well, what are you going to do when you get out? Yes, Google is Google. If your name is out there, you've got to have a plan. How am I going to respond to that? And sometimes it makes sense to talk about the crime. Sometimes it doesn't. I can't define success for you. I can give you a strategy, but you definitely do not have to be responding to a crime. Let's talk about a guy I'm going to be working with. I'm really looking forward to it. This guy has expertise in a career that I want to use to influence 10,000 people in prison. He's skilled as a digital marketer. And so because he's skilled as a digital marketer, that's the type of career that would be beneficial to somebody who doesn't want to reveal his past, because sometimes it's hard to get back in the game. Sometimes it's hard to get a job. Sometimes it's hard to get in business again, but he's got a skill. So he's going to use his time to write about that skill so that we could use it to teach other people. Now, he doesn't have to mention anything about his crime. He's giving something of value to society. He can later use that as an asset when he's arguing for early termination of supervised release, or potentially when he's arguing on why he should get transitioned from a prison to a home confinement situation. These are strategies. They're not guarantees, but they're strategies that work for me. It's why Justin and I really advocate for them, because we don't ever want you to look at us like you've looked at your attorneys, right? That told you what to happen and it didn't work out that way. We will always be honest with you and tell you this is what we would have done. And then we would encourage you, hey, take this in your calculus and see if it makes sense and it works for you. Justin, I'm sorry for going so long.
Yeah, no, that's very, please. This is very helpful. One thing I do want to stress when you write, if you have a blog, you feel that you must talk about your crime. One thing that I really learned while working alongside Michael was thinking differently and embracing the reality that we're in prison, we're felons. There are people that said to me, Justin, it's in your interest to write about this because you wanted to become a consultant someday. The truth is, by virtue of writing about it and creating a new record, there have been so many opportunities that have opened. But one thing that may come up, someone about a week when I was released from prison, I went back to my former office and they're like, dude, we know you got a raw deal. We know you got screwed. We know you were the fall guy for UBS. And that's what I wanted to hear before I went to prison. And people are going to say to you, John, I know that you weren't the ringleader here. I know that you were swept into this. I know this is BS and I'm sorry. Well, how are you going to respond? This is what I said to these people a week after I was done with prison. I said, if I don't see you for the next year, let me just convey one thing. I made bad decisions. I own it. I broke the law and I'm responsible. It's nobody else's but my own. And a lot of people would always say, man, that's refreshing. I didn't expect to hear that. I want you, John, to be able to say that because I love you, but sometimes you will kind of default to, it was my partner and I was swept into this. Yes, but you pled guilty and people are going to say that to you. And I think you command respect and you're more believable if you say something similar to I said, which is, hey, I pled guilty for a reason. I made bad decisions. This is what I'm doing moving forward. The messaging is very crucial there. So back to my blog with Michael, I didn't write about it a great deal. I just always said the same thing. I made bad decisions. I accept responsibility. I deserve to be held accountable. I'm working to build a new record. And I think that is just the message without getting into the weeds again and again and again, right? Those are my suggestions and thoughts. To Ryan, there's a question I saw from Paul about I've been the day I will be in Allenwood Low and the handbook says the facility has controlled movement. Michael, I got to defer to you again, but I'm sorry. In this facility, I did not endure controlled movement, Michael. What is a controlled movement and how could that impact someone's day?
So I'm happy to interject in these in the middle, or we could do it at the end, however it works for you, Justin. But
okay, so why don't let me answer the question about
you finish your presentation.
Okay.
And I'm going through the chats just while Justin's talking, so I can respond in the chat.
Perfect.
And that's great. And then at the end of your presentation, so I don't take you offline and start talking about those things, stay on your focus. And at the end, I'm very happy to respond to everybody. But I'll also respond through chats.
Thank you, Paul. So let me address the question, and then I'm going to also address what Glenn wrote about the look of a blog and things of that nature. And this will benefit everyone who's going to be in prison. So you'll find in a camp or a low, it can be surprising how much time you actually have. And Paul, I think you're going to be very surprised. We talked a little about this on our call last week. There are some guys who are just so bored. They're like watching paint dry or waiting for mail call, where they watching TV all day. There is so much time there. It is actually breathtaking, right? Even if you exercise for 3 hours a day and do a job that's 2, 3, 4 hours a day, and you go to the chow hall and sleep, there is so much time left in front of you. So you will have ample opportunity throughout the day to write a blog or send an email home via core links that someone in your network can distribute. Some people via core links, Paul will actually, you can email everyone on your mailing list at once. So you could write an email, and if you have 30 or 40, 30 people or so on your list, everyone can receive that email. So you can be sharing with them, whether it's daily or weekly, what you're doing. The downside to emailing everyone at one time, you're going to get 30 individual responses, and you can live on that machine responding all day, which is what some people want because it helps them feel busy and it passes the time. We've had some clients who say, I don't want to do that. It's a distraction to be on this machine 6 hours a day, but you will have ample time to read, to work, to sleep, to eat, to exercise. It's stunning how much time there could be in a minimum security or low security prison, which is why you've got to be thinking about your routine, which is why you've got to watch the prior webinar that Michael did. We talked about the quadrant theory. Like, what is a high risk, high reward behavior, low risk, low reward? I would argue documenting your journey through prison with your network is low risk. Well, it could be a little higher risk depending on what you're writing. It was higher risk for Michael because he was writing about the failures of the system, how it extinguishes hope and perpetuates failure. That's a little higher risk. For me, it was low risk because I was writing how prison was helping me. That's what an administrator would probably want to read. It was helping me become better. So it was a low risk, really high reward activity. It really changed my life. And as Scott said earlier, he hit the ground running when he got out. I hit the ground running day one because I had this whole body of work to give a probation officer. That was so transformative for me. So I don't want you to ever think I won't have time to do it. That's because you're choosing to do something less important, like watching TV, like guys will do all day, right? And as all of us know, this is harder on our loved ones. You have a fiance, she's going to be concerned. That first call home will be a big deal. How are you responding? What are you doing? It's so uplifting for them, Joseph or Scott with your dad, Herb, right? When they got these messages from you, they could exhale and think, wow, Like they're productive in there. They're okay. They're making the most of this experience. And I can't stress that. Michael knows my mother. He loves her. She was a basket case. She cried in every visitation. For months, she thought I was lying about how productive prison was until she read it, until she saw it. That changed everything for my family. But it just required some writing. And frankly, I needed help with that. And I retained Michael to help me do that. 400 or 500 words. It was transformative. Why? Because 400 words over 7 days is 3,000 words. Over a month, that's 12,000 words. Over 3 months, that's a book. That's a book that you can distribute and share. It's all free. It's just your time to do it. That's better than the Kardashians watching all day, or Sons of Anarchy, or what guys do all day in prison. And that's why I opened up the webinar by saying you could try to pay people to produce this make-believe content and suppress these releases, or you can own the fact that when people Google you, that release is number one. But for me, it's now on page 30, page 40. Or when people say it, read it, I'll say, yeah, it's true. I made bad decisions. This is what I've learned to overcome it. Exactly what Scott has done, or what Joseph is doing, or what John, what you need to do. Because if not, people are going to come home and look at your prison record and say, well, what did you do all day? I think these things are essential. Glenn, let me turn to your question of the look of the blog. Let me share my screen again with hopes that I've done it correctly. Can everyone see my screen on the left?
Yes.
This is a site that we don't really maintain anymore. But Glenn, I want to answer your question about the blog. This was just a WordPress blog that was created for free. It was nothing. The only effort was sending the blog home, and my mom posted it on the internet. Now, with core links, you don't even have to send it home, and no one will have to type it for you. It's great. So this is a WordPress blog going back to my prison term, going all the way back to October 27, 2008. And every day until my release from prison, Michael and I wrote a blog, accepting the term convicted felon. This blog was on Halloween 2008. And what's very satisfying is not only has this helped repair my reputation and have people say, wow, it's really impressive what you did through prison. In my space, it's pretty cool when our team gets a new client, when someone says, I've been up all night reading your blog. I'm like, which one? They're like, from 2009. It's 2022. Due to Google, it lives forever. So I'm not saying you're going to become consultants. Maybe you work with our team, maybe you don't. But Glenn, if someday you're growing this boxing business and gym, and a competitor could seek to use your felony conviction against you, which I'm going to get into that here in a few minutes, how a competitor tried to hurt us. This happens. We have had clients build successful businesses. Competitors find out about the conviction, and they begin issuing nasty releases on Yelp or Ripoff Report to try to destroy you and say, how could you work with someone that is a felon and a crook and a criminal? Here is his release. People are ruthless. They want the business. They want to hurt you. And they're always going to default to the fact that you're a felon. If any of you are ever sued the rest of your life, it will go like this: Justin Paperny, a convicted felon. Joseph DiGregorio, a convicted felon. Scott Laney, a convicted felon. So if you can embrace that, Glenn or Joseph or John or anyone, and have this work to point to, it just separates you, because you can see I made bad decisions. I went to prison, but this is what's come from it. This is what I've learned. This is how we help people. It requires, as Michael said to me in prison, looking years out into the future, like 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And doing work today, because I used to say to him, man, I'm writing this blog. What if no one reads it? Like, he'd say, it's not about views, Justin. He used to say, who gives an F how many people are reading it? That's not the purpose of this, to get clicks. It's to demonstrate what you're learning through struggle, how you could, and that he was right. And then the irony is, by doing it the right way, the views and everything that I wanted came.
One other thing I would say that it's very powerful for is you are going to have to advocate for yourself. Like we were talking with Paul earlier today, who has an immigration challenge. And, there's always discretion. There's always discretion. There's always a possibility to influence the stakeholders who have enormous discretion over your life. We have a member of our team who is not an American citizen. He served time in prison, 7 years, I think, 6 years. He's now our head of IT. He really runs our technology business. But according to the immigration rules, he theoretically should be deported. There are personal circumstances that anybody can take to put themselves like in a different algorithm. And we're really very grateful that he's in a different algorithm because he didn't get deported. Well, I don't know what's going to happen with anybody, but I know that doing things like Justin's talking about makes it easier for you to get the stakeholders to see you as something different. And that's really important, to be saying, okay, I know that a judge has power over me. I know that the Bureau of Prisons has power over me. I know that these other people have power over me. Some people will have power over me that I never meet. And that's a distinct possibility. So what you want to get are build these assets, which is what Justin's talking about. It becomes an asset, is what I mean when I say a tool, tactic, or a resource that will advance or accelerate your prospects for a better outcome. I can't change, nobody can change what the judge did already. If you've been sentenced, you've been sentenced. If you haven't been sentenced and you're on this project, then you need to be thinking about what can I do to influence that process at every stage. And I'd really encourage you guys to look at our free resources on Prison Professors, where we talk about the mitigation arc and said, the best time to fight this case is long before you ever got charged. Once you get charged, then that's the next best time. Then the next best time might be before you meet with your probation officer for the PSR. Then the next best time might be before sentencing. Then the next best time might be thinking about these people in the Bureau of Prisons that are going to have discretion on when you can leave or when you can transition to home confinement. For some people, it may be an immigration judge who may have the power and authority to keep you in the United States or to deport you. All of this requires self-advocacy. All of this requires you saying, have I built a story that gets the system to see me differently? And now I think that's just more important than ever for people to do, given the First Step Act and given the way that what's going on in the Bureau of Prisons. So that's why we like to spend a lot of time, people, hey, learn this stuff now, because we don't want to hear you're in prison and say, nobody ever told you that. Because I'm telling you, it's in my books, but I can't tell you everything I learned of going through prison in 9,500 days unless you ask these questions. So I just wanted to put a sub-paragraph on that, Justin, about why it's also important. It becomes a tool you can use to advocate for yourself. And I'll let you continue.
Thank you. And one thing that I fell victim to in prison, and I thought people had good intentions. They would tell me something and I would believe it foolishly. And I used to run to Michael's cubicle and I'd say, man, this guy said I'm going to get in trouble for writing a blog or a book. And Michael said, let's go for a walk. And I said, where are we going? He said, let's go for a walk. And he walked me down to the prison library and he showed me this policy statement. And it's important for you to understand what you can and cannot do, whether it's a newsletter or a blog or a book. And then Michael, I'll never forget, in Taft Library, shared with me this program statement: purpose and scope, to encourage inmates to use their leisure time for creative writing and to permit the direct mailing of all manuscripts as ordinary correspondence. So Michael said, the policy allows you to write as long as it doesn't get in the way of your job in the kitchen. So I don't know what so-and-so said on the track. This is the policy. So I want you to understand this as well. So I felt comfortable writing and working with Michael to do it. But also, if any of you need to start a new business, and I know many of you do, a great way to begin building the business or continuing a business or sharing, like Gordy, it's good to see you, my friend. It's been a little while. It's our friend Gordy Ernst. Gordy, good to see you. I mean, Gordy, for example, has a skill set as a teaching pro in tennis that will never go away, regardless of how long his prison term is or what he did. And at the end of the day, people generally care about how can you help them? How is it in their self-interest to work with you or hire you? So if Gordy, for example, can use his time in custody to demonstrate how he can continue to help young students become the best tennis players in the world, people at the end of the day will retain him or hire him or invest in him. that moves past the felony conviction and goes towards what people are most concerned about. How can you help me? It's easier if you can show the work, show that you've done it. And that comes back to what subject matter experts have told us time and time again. Lawyers may be paid to say why you're worthy of leniency. Judges feel like they got a lot of lip service at sentencing. That kind of happened 2 days ago at the sentencing. Judge, you're telling me what I want to hear. Okay. If you have a body of if you have work over a period of time, it just makes it more plausible, more believable. And that's a better use of your time than just obsessing when the sentence may end, because it's ending. Gordy, did you want to say something? Take it off the mute button. You're muted in red.
Can you hear me, Jess?
Yes, good to see you, bud.
You too. And not trying to stroke your ego or pat you on the back, but you were right all along. I do want to say that to everyone on the call today, that about just everything in general, starting in the beginning. I wish I listened more to you in the beginning. Now I'm going back, and I don't have to elaborate on everything, Justin, but your advice has been dead on correct, from lawyers, from fees, from dealing with the prosecutors and whatnot. But it's also helped me not become bitter. Like, everything you're saying about going forward is so true. And that's all I've been thinking about, is like Michael's been saying in the last few webinars, right? Release plan. What are you going to do next? What are you going to do with your life? How are you going to add value? And that's everything. Now I'm just looking at it as like, all right, as soon as I go in, how am I going to sort of, what's going to be next in my career? And I just wanted to really thank you for everything.
Before you go on that, Gordy, I want to just say, we need you to write that down for yourself and send it to yourself. Put a schedule, send that to me a month in, 3 months in, 6 months in. Let me tell you why. Carol was just telling me, I don't do a lot of everybody knows I don't really do a lot of the one-on-one. I don't have the time. I'm working on the other side of our company.
Right.
But my wife runs admin for us. And she a lot of times sees all of these messages we get from people in prison. And we have two ladies. One of them was on this panel, these things with us. And she writes us like she is so happy where she is.
Right.
All the stuff behind her, and knowing, okay, I'm climbing out. I know what I'm doing right now. I'm going to get through this. She says, because of that mindset, she's happy every day. She finds beauty in the people she's meeting, listening to their stories, finding a way to contribute. And Carol says, she's laughing at a release plan. What were you saying about the release plan? It's funny that they should let her out just because of the release plan she wrote. But she was well prepared. Another person reached out to be on part of our community, but they weren't on all of these projects. And that person is like every day suicidal and depressed.
Yeah.
And they're in the same place. Okay. Yep. So you can be at the same place. Like Scott was in Yankton and you could see he's well adjusted. So when I first met Scott, we had these talks about what was happening, but he had a good experience. But Scott, weren't there people in Yankton that just found it a great opportunity to complain every single day, which makes a 1-year sentence feel like a 100-year sentence? Scott, could you speak about perception of prison?
Sure. There were a lot of people like that. And it's like Justin says, regarding the blog. And Justin, I really appreciated the story you shared about how you handled the situation with your former coworkers who, when you came back, said, oh, you got a raw deal and this happened and that was bad and this was BS. Humility and accepting responsibility for what you did, they never go out of style. And there's inmates who will complain every day that they didn't do it and they shouldn't be there. And then you meet guys who go, I did it. I'm taking it on the chin and I'm serving my time. And those people have more friends. They have an easier time. The experience is far more manageable. And to me, that concept was on the front of my mind every day. Complaining doesn't help you. It doesn't help the people around you. You just got to own it and take it and keep moving forward. And it makes it so much more manageable.
And the nice thing is there are so many examples of people who have done this with felony convictions and they are thriving and crushing it. If anything, they're better because this experience has taught them so many things, right? I mean, and that's I mean, those are things I want you to get excited about, because I frequently see questions or texts from clients that say, this is my sentence. I mean, John, with a 48-month sentence, will I still get the 7.5 months of earned time? I was Jonathan. John, I was John. My family would send me Michael Santos's blogs before I went to prison. I said, don't send me any more of his blogs. When am I getting out? Jonathan, I love you. When we talk, that's kind of the call. I get it. You want to get home to your children. Every time, Justin, walk me through the math again. We've done it 100 times. We're going to continue to do it. But the question is, and this is what Michael used to ask me in prison, if you get what you want, which is to get the maximum halfway house time, like, how are you going to live? How are you going to pay your bills? And I said, I don't really know the answer to that question. And then it was, well, maybe you should be less fixated on when you get out. Because as he did in a prior webinar, the U-shaped curve, right? You reach the end of your prison term with a whole new set of anxieties, like, oh my God, how am I going to live and pay the health insurance? So you want to begin sending that you the first day, which is partly why we're having this call. John, Scott, Joe, me will meet people and say, dude, I heard you went to prison. I'm so sorry. I don't want to talk. No, I want to talk about it. This is what I learned.
Right.
So whether you're articulating it, it's a blog. The part of the reason people like me were vulnerable and paid $16,000 to a reputation management company is because I was lazy. I didn't want to do the work. I wanted to outsource all of it. And yes, I retained Michael in prison, but I was still vested, or tried to be, to the extent that I could. You've got to do the work. No different from what Judge Boo told us in a video. If you break my window, don't say I'm sorry. What is your plan to fix the window? What is your plan in prison to convey to a case manager why you may be worthy of more time? Or if it doesn't happen, why you're worthy of the job you want in the halfway house? Because I got that call 4 days ago from a guy that said, oh my God, they didn't approve my job. They want me to come back with 15 employment applications for 7-Eleven and Lowe's. I'd rather be in prison. Then you ask what he did in prison. It was the Kardashians all day. There's no plan. There's no record. So it's one thing to fixate on the release, but sometimes be careful what you get. Because you're going to be meeting these people and you're going to want to influence them. And again, whether it's a blog, a book, a newsletter, or just even if it's writing letters to a probation officer, which is something that Michael encouraged me to do. And of course, there were cynics in prison who said, you don't even know who your probation officer is. They're never even going to read it. And I said that to Michael. He said, just get the address and send it there and make a copy of it. And lo and behold, Isaiah Murrow, my PO, when I shook his hand, said, I got your letters. Wow. It didn't take long to write them. These are things that are just absolutely vital. We're running out of time. I want to close with one thing, and then we'll turn it over to questions. Glenn, this comes down to something we've discussed previous. Glenn, are you still with us?
I am just
good. So we have had some clients before going to prison really built successful businesses like you're building. And sometimes people do get jealous and they want to hurt you. So in our case, we had several years ago, it's the first time I'm speaking about it. It was very difficult for me to read that a competitor had anonymously defamed me online. And I felt that it would destroy our business and our reputation. And I was so embarrassed when I read it, I didn't even discuss it with Michael for like more than a month. And it was very.
Why do you say a competitor? Why don't you just say who?
I'm going to share that in a minute. I'm going to get through it. Yeah.
I mean, I'm all open about it.
So this comes down when you begin to have success on the other side. People are going to be jealous. They're going to want to take you down. They're going to want to hurt you. So there is a competitor or someone in our space who goes by Rdap Dan. And in April of 2017, there was this anonymous report written on Ripoff Report. And I'd never had a bad review before. And it was devastating to read, I thought. And it was anonymous. And this person wrote that they had paid a lawyer $200,000. They paid us $7,500 for a narrative. They didn't get the narrative. It was a scam. Nothing happened. He promised to get into the Rdap program. All the buzzwords that you would expect someone to say, writing that I'm not a good person, buyer beware. And it was very hard to read this. And it was also, when I read it, a reminder that there are some things I could have done better. And Glenn, this is a good takeaway for you. You should be getting good reviews on Facebook or Trustpilot, building up reviews authentically. For a long time, I hadn't done that. I figured if we did our job, I didn't want to bother a client to ask for a review. That was a mistake, because when this came out, I could have had 200 reviews. I didn't ask. I was just lazy. I didn't follow up. Then this review came out and it really impacted me, and it was anonymous. And I would tell people it's a competitor, and they'd say, sure it is. It's in your interest to say it. And through great expense, and time, and Michael and I used to discuss it at great length. I went through the expense of suing and actually hiring a law firm. And ultimately it ended with a retraction. But it cost $60,000. It took 2.5 years, where eventually Daniel Weiss admitted responsibility for filing that anonymous ripoff report. There was no legitimate factual basis for these statements. A court of law has found these statements to be false, defamatory, and unlawful. So we could have a whole course or debate on whether I should have sued him and whatnot. The point is, as Michael wrote in the end of Lessons from Prison, like, more to come, guys. Okay, if you're building businesses and if you're successful, people are going to get jealous. They're going to try to take you down. They're going to try to hurt you. So to the extent you could be managing that now, Glenn, with your business, because it's going to run while you're in custody, we don't want you to be vulnerable and weak if these things start to happen. You want to manage these things now. And again,
that helps a lot.
Say it again, Glenn.
No, so that's very helpful.
So we're going to do this again tomorrow. I'm really grateful for Michael, my partner, stepping in to assist. I'm really grateful to have led a portion of this webinar. Before I close, I'm very passionate about this. This would not have happened for me had I not met Michael, and I'm not here to sing his praise. I got very lucky because I would have been the dude that ran 10 miles a day, chilled and watched TV, and I would have been the guy after prison that asking for a friend for a job. That's where I was heading. And that all changed because the advice I'm giving you, who gave me, but it is hard to do the work on days you miss home, you miss birthdays, you miss anniversaries, and you'd rather do anything else but get up and write. That was me a lot of the time, but I had someone to help me. And to the extent that we can help you, we want to, because you'll be the one serving time in prison. And we hope that even an hour together will compel you to do work on those days you'd rather watch TV or complain over your plea agreement or lawyer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We know that a lot of you have been shafted. We know that a lot of you should never be in the criminal justice system. It would have been far better to have this handled in the civil matter. It's the reason for what I do. And, we've got a great team. We've got a great team. Maybe you guys will be members of our team at some point. But the reality is that nobody can change the past. We can only navigate our way going forward. And the system is kind of designed to extinguish hope and to obliterate hope and to tell you you've got nothing coming and just do the time. Our job is to show you, hey, there's a pathway through, but that pathway is not always clear. If the Bureau of Prisons did what it was supposed to do, everybody would get their earned time credits right away. They would create policies and procedures that encourage you to build relationships with family and employers, but they make it more difficult than it has to be. And so I have to do my part, and my part is like going into prisons and trying to persuade administrators and people in prison how we need your help to build this pathway to success. So then we can go to Washington and speak with legislators and say why this is wrong to lock everybody up, because it doesn't make sense. It's not good for our country. It's not good for your families. And we need a better system. But this might be 20 years in the making. It's something I'm passionate for because I spent so much time of my life in prison. But you guys, it may not be. It may be, it may not be. I don't know. All I know is when you go in there, you have to expect, okay, a judge sentenced me to this amount of time. I now have to learn, how do I pull the levers so that I'm in the best possible position to get out at the soonest possible time? And that mitigation strategy had better be adjusted at every stage. From if you haven't been charged yet, and I don't know a lot of the people on this thing, you haven't been charged yet, what's the strategy? If I've been charged, what's the strategy? If I've done my PSR, what's the strategy? If haven't been sentenced, what's the strategy? If I'm going in, what's the strategy? If I'm getting ready for supervised release, what's the strategy? It's got to be iterative. Those are not my words. Those are information that we got from interviewing federal judges, director of the Bureau of Prisons, chief of U.S. probation, all of these people. And you could watch them all for free on our website. So that's what I encourage you to do. What I'd love to do now, and I'm going to sneeze for a second, so I got to
Michael, let me just answer one quick question, and then I'll turn it back over to you. Ryan, regarding your question, regarding looking at your post, I'm struggling with goal and direction. Your comment here is exactly what I said to Michael in prison. I felt so overwhelmed. I didn't have a goal. I didn't know what to do. So I would give you the same advice he gave me, which is you've got to get started. Be authentic. If that first blog or newsletter is, I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do, but I want to become better and I want my network to hold me accountable, then that's the message. Or what Michael encouraged me to do, the next book you read, why did you read it? And how will it help you in prison? How will it help you after prison? Then you begin to you gain traction. Then you get going and then things begin to fall into place. So I don't want you to be so paralyzed. It's like, that's how I was. I didn't know where to start, so I didn't start. I would just start by writing that out, exactly what you wrote and building upon it. And we can I can relate to what you said, because that's very similar to what I said. And to the last part, you'd like to work for yourself or somebody else. I too, you want to have options. You want to be able to work for yourself, potentially a business, but I only think that comes if you know your story and you've created these assets and you can demonstrate how you could be of value to people. Because at the end of the day, that's what they're most concerned about. Can you help us? And have you learned your lesson? And many people say, I'm inspired by your journey. I've done worse. I mean, you'll hear that the rest of your life. My God, I've done far worse than you. I just want you to be very, very clear about doing something today, because it will eventually pay off. It could take years. And that was a message that really got through to me. And it made the prison term incredibly productive. I'll turn it back over to you, Michael.
Well, I want to now, it's not to me, I would really like to respond to the questions now.
Okay.
I could sit there reading, or somebody could just unmute themselves and ask the question. I know, Paul, I'd like to, before Paul has asked this question through email and I saw it, and it was about low security prisons. Is that right, Paul? Could you ask me the question?
Yeah. Yes, the Allenwood low that I'm going to, it's a low facility, and it says it's got a controlled movement. And I know I've been hearing, and Justin said it also, that I have a lot of free time to do all those things to help me get better. I want to do that, but I don't know how controlled movement will restrict me from doing such a thing. I can't picture my day over there.
Yeah, let me just remove the myth here of controlled movement. It's not an issue. You get used to it. What it means is, in a camp, in a minimum security camp, not all minimum security camps, but most minimum security camps, they have a real shortage of staff members. So there might be one staff member for 500 people. So they can't have a controlled movement. So everybody's kind of like on the honor system, and they can just walk around the whole camp wherever they want, whenever they want. Okay? That's a camp. Anything other than a camp, they have controlled movements. And controlled movements means the prison has different areas. There might be an education department. There might be a recreation department. There might be a yard, the track and the field. There might be a food services area, a library, a commissary. And then there's the housing units. The only way you're allowed to go from one area of the prison to the other area of the prison is during what's called a controlled move. And the controlled move just simply means this. You know that every day between 8 o'clock and 4 o'clock, there is what's called controlled movement in a low. Okay? So between 8 o'clock and 4 o'clock, in order for you to leave an area of the prison and go to another area of the prison, you have to go to wait for the move. So for 5 minutes before 8 and 5 minutes after 8, anybody can move around. Okay, then it's just open. Next time you get to your place, you're stuck there for an hour, or you're stuck there till the next move. You can be there for 2 hours, but you just can't leave that area until the move. So it's nothing that's going to complicate your life. It's just becoming the schedule. In the same way that their schedule is, they serve breakfast from say 6 in the morning until 6:45. They serve lunch from like 11 until 12. They serve dinner from 5 until 6 or something like that. So there's just these different times. The prison is a bureaucracy, and you've got to just kind of deal with those complications. But I hope that answers your question. Mainly, I just want to remove the worry about controlled movement. I lived with it for 16 years or so. No big deal.
Michael.
Let me just make sure I answered all of Paul's questions. Then we'll go. Paul, was that all of your questions, or did you have another one?
One more. So doing all this blog I think you covered it a little bit. I know you have access. I can have access to emails, but do I have access to internet to do a blog?
No internet access. Okay. In prison, they have this quasi email system that you could send information out of. If you look on Prison Professors under advocacy, the campaign, I did a video that kind of shows you through it and you can see it. And so I think you should watch it. I think you should have your family watch it. And that way everybody kind of knows how they will communicate and it will be very helpful to you. Okay. So, Justin, if you're going to do a follow-up on this, I'll do a follow-up on this and publish the video, but also I will tell you, I will provide a link into that, to that core links message so that you understand how the email works and what Justin's talking about, how you can send the blog out. Okay. Okay. That was it. So Gordon, I guess you're next. Let me respond.
Hey, Michael, quick question. I'm going in on Monday, level 3 I'm hearing, which is no visiting. There's a chance I'll have to quarantine as well when I go in. But my big question is the Rdap, like we talked about last week. I should be in, it was in my pre-sentence report. Sam believed I'd be in, a number of other people. But how do you get that confirmation, A, when you go in, and B, I saw a question about, let's say you missed the class. Let's say it started 2 days ago. When does the next one? I know it starts every 3 months, but do you have any idea right now, Michael, when the next one
it's been 9 years since I left prison, and members of our team are far better off at answering that question than me. But we also have Scott on there, who just left a prison camp and left after participating in Rdap. Scott, could you tell us how it worked at Yankton?
Sure. Regarding quarantine, I wish I had more info. If you have to quarantine, the ironically funny part of it is you'll get to know those guys really well that you quarantine with. And by the time you walk onto the prison compound, you already have a few good friends. Quarantine's manageable. It's not fun, but it's safe and you'll get through it. As far as Rdap, it's tough. I don't know if someone could call and just find out when the class is starting. However, I ended up starting a month early. Some people started 3 weeks later and they let them in. So it's not a hard cutoff, but this is where I was. I can't speak to where you were.
Right.
They may let you come in 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks late and make that up on the back end. So I wouldn't be overly concerned about the start date because they usually want people in the program as well.
Right.
And again, if Sam feels good about it and it's documented in your PSR, the DAPC, the psychologist who runs the program, they will find you and interview you probably within a week of your release from quarantine and possibly even while you're in quarantine.
Okay.
So you're going to be admitted based on your.
Thank you, Scott.
Date. Yeah.
You're welcome.
You're going to be admitted based on your release date, as Scott said. And there's a goal theoretically to help people get through it and get out.
Yep.
So let's just go with that optimism. If things don't work out, then there's a response, and that response is, the best thing is always just say, let me go through this without a fight. What is your sentence length, Gordon?
I got 30 months.
30 months. So
Yep.
You're going to have a really short date. You're going to get in there they're going to get you in there as soon as possible.
So I do the 9 month in Rdap. And like you were saying, Michael, good chance they release me at that point.
Yeah, I would say so, based on a lot of things. I would say that if you got a 30-month sentence, somebody else who does more consumer work than I do on our team, whether it's Justin or Sam, can you guys give that estimate on 30 months? Well, Scott, you can do it. Is that about accurate?
I would say most of the guys I was with in Rdap who had a 30-month sentence were out within 1 month after completing Rdap.
Yep.
10.5 to 11 months.
And again, you have to be careful with disciplinary infractions though, because they'll bite you in the butt, especially if you get in trouble for anything now, they freeze your ability to gain earned time credits. So
that means anything. Do not bring an extra apple out of the chow hall. Okay? It means anything.
The most minor thing has dire consequences and can add up to 30 days to your sentence. So it's not up to us to decide how we feel about the rules. It's to just fall in line. I will say you're a tennis player. I'm a tennis player too. You're going to love playing pickleball in prison. It's an absolute riot.
I'll be teaching it.
Oh no, we had a blast, Gordy. You're gonna do good.
Oh my God, Justin! If I had a nickel for every time I heard that, right, I could finally pay the government back and my lawyer. Yeah. But yeah, no, I wish they had a hockey rink too. I really want to skate, but they don't have that either. So
not quite.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there other questions?
Hi, Michael. It's Victoria.
Hey, Victoria. I'm so
How are you?
sorry I was so slow in getting you that document request.
Oh, it's okay. Michael, can you elaborate more on the on what you were chatting with John or Joe about the 18th month? Like within the 18 months, they will give you the final.
Yes. Okay. I want to, for those of you who were a little late in the early start of the webinar, I gave this preliminary insight about a change that's happening in the Bureau of Prisons right now with regard to how the Bureau of Prisons is computing earned time credits. A memorandum just came out, a very poorly worded memorandum, I might add, and I'll actually just share it with you. So let me share my screen and share my screen. There we are. So I think you can all see it right now. This is a very poorly worded memorandum that came from the Bureau of Prisons and went out to all people in prison. And it says, recently, the Bureau has launched the federal time credits auto calculation application. All eligible inmates will be reviewed regardless of pattern risk level, release date, and credits will be applied consistent with the final rules, language, and implementing text. As a reminder, the unit team will determine an inmate's eligibility to earn FTCs based on the current conviction and prior criminal convictions. The earning of FTCs is based on earning status and not participation or completion of individual programs. Inmates who refuse or fail to complete any portion of the needs assessment or refuse or decline any program recommended to address a specific identified need area is considered opted out and will not earn FTC. Okay, it's important to understand that, and we'll talk about how do you understand that later. The following are items that this is the poorly worded part. The following items have been incorporated into the calculation. I think we can interpret that as say the following items have been incorporated into the calculation of FTCs. This is just an example of the sloppiness of the Bureau of Prisons, just poorly worded English that makes it hard to follow what they're doing. And I think that this is also a reflection of just how complicated rolling out the First Step Act is. It's just such a big transaction. It's just such a big change in the BOP that they're rushing out this kind of information that is of vital importance to people in there. So what am I doing? The big thing that Victoria asked about, other than these kinds of things right here, which are we've really covered extensively in our previous webinars about the importance of participating in FRP, not getting a disciplinary infraction, participating in every course available, filling out your pattern score, going through the process, and really being, really avoiding problems in prison. That's all stuff within your control. This is something that is not within your control, this bold area here. And so it says, eligible inmates will continue to earn FTCs toward early release until they have accumulated 365 days. So that means that you can get up to a year off. But in order to get the year off, a lot of factors have to take place. Number one, you have to have a minimum security score. Number two, minimum pattern score or a low pattern score. Number two, you have to have participated in the programs every month. And number three, your sentence has to be long enough that you can get all the benefit. If your sentence is not long enough, you can't get all the benefits because the second clause of this sentence, because notice the capital letters, or are 18 months from their release date, whichever happens first. At this point, the release date becomes fixed, and all additional FTCs are applied toward RRC or home confinement placement. That is a very, very complicated piece of language that our team is going to do our best to untangle. Because if
How do you explain that, Michael? How do you understand that?
what's your sentence length, Glenn?
48 months.
You're kind of okay. Victoria, what's your sentence length?
24 months.
So a 24-month sentence makes it really complicated because your sentence is not long enough to get all the benefits that I believe you are entitled to receiving. And what do we have to do to fix it? Let's just figure out, what does that mean? Okay, I'm going to use one of those things that I saw Justin using, sharing the screen, a whiteboard, to try and map it out. I'm going to do the best that I can on this whiteboard. So let me go to text tool. And we're going to say sentence length, 24 months. Can you guys read that? Probably not. Let me try and change that to black. And change it to bold format, black, heavy, black, bold. Let's try that. Okay. Sentence length is 24 months, right, Victoria? Is that right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Then let's take statutory good time. That's 3 months, right? Because it's 15% of 24 months, correct?
Yes.
So that means your release date is going to be 21 months from the day you surrender, correct? You understand that right now, correct?
Yep.
And let me ask you, are you going to participate in Rdap or are you not going to participate in Rdap?
I don't think I'm eligible. No.
Okay, great. So we're not going to calculate. So let's start off with 21 months. Now, given the complexity of the Bureau of Prisons, knowing that it's just this really big agency, let's say that the first month you get there, you cannot participate in any ETC classes. Okay, why? It's not because you don't want to participate. It's just because the complexities of being in prison, you got to go through a team meeting, you got to do a survey on the pattern score, and you have to show that you are a minimum pattern, which I'm sure you are. But let's say 1 month passes and you now have only 20 months left until your release date. Do you understand why, Victoria?
Yes.
Because you had 21 and we served them
-1.
and you
Yep.
didn't get any ETC, so now you're 20 months. Okay? Now let's say over the next 2 months, you do qualify and you earn 15 days on each one. So that means next 2 months, you participate in classes. That means you get credit for 1 month of earned ETC, right? 15 days and 15 days over 2 months, that's 30 days. That means over the next 2 months, you're actually going to get credit for 3 months. Do you follow that? Okay.
Yes.
So that means you now have 17 months remaining. 17 months is under 18 months. We would agree on that, right?
Yes.
Okay. But the BOP's memorandum tells us that if you're at 18 months, your date becomes fixed. That means the BOP release date is not going to change, but you can still earn time credits. Okay? So now you have 17 days that you owe to the Bureau of Prisons, and you're going to still get out earlier, but you're not going to be done with the Bureau of Prisons. You're going to have to do the rest of the time on home confinement. So let's say that they're going to give you, let's say they agree to give you 6 months halfway house. They're going to give you that. They're eligible to give you 12 because of the Second Chance Act. But let's not talk about the greatest thing. Let's say they give you 6. That 17 months means that 6 months earlier, which is 11 months, they're going to transition you to a halfway house. Okay?
Okay.
You're going to leave prison at 11 months and go to a halfway house. But you're going to be in prison for these 11 months. So let's say that you continue doing these earned time credits over the next 4 months. That's going to give you 2 more months earned time credit. That gets to apply to those 11 months. So you should now be able to go home instead of 11 at 9. Now we got to do another 2 months. And if you do 2 more months of earned time credit, now you've been there for like 6 or 7 months, and maybe then that's a sweet spot. So you can theoretically, if you've done all of these things and you had a longer sentence, all that time would come off of your time that you owe to the BOP. But now for you, based on this, unless we can prevail with our advocacy work, you're going to probably serve 7 to 11 months in prison and the rest of your time on home confinement. I mean, or a combination of a halfway house and home confinement. This is still very unclear because this just came out yesterday. And as I wrote, it's a big problem. It's a problem that I want to help fix. So what did I do? I reached out to hire 2 former BOP executives because they're retired now, so I can hire them. And I'm going to hire them and say, hey, let's kind of work through this so that my team can understand it. And if my team can understand it, they will be more effective at communicating. So we'll probably cover this next week because I hope to do this first interview today. But I do want to say a lot of this is unknown and we can try, but I don't know what's going to happen because that memo is really unclear and we've got to see it. Well, they're going to have to train all the case managers. And do you know when you surrender, Victoria?
Yes, October 3rd.
October the 3rd. So a couple more weeks. Well, my projection based on experience, and not knowing how the litigation will unfold and the advocacy work will unfold, I think that based on what I'm seeing today, you should expect in your head, I've got 24 months. A real victory would be to get out in 10. That would be a real victory to transition out. 7 or 8 might be possible, but a real victory would be 10. The worst case would probably be 13. So I'm going to say my guess is going to be between 7 and 13 months in prison, but that's just a projection. I gotta interview more people and I got to see what's going on around the country. And of course, I will be sharing that with you through the Core Links messages while you're in prison. That's part of what we'll do. We'll send you this information, because you will not learn it all while you're at your prison. You know, at your prison, they may not give you this information. So I have to keep trying to get it and send it to you. And then we will help you fill out whatever you have to fill out or show you what you have to fill out to get the best situation. But the best advice is really work on that release plan. Make sure you're participating in financial responsibility. Do every course you can, and that will make you a better candidate. Okay?
Okay. So just to clarify, once I'm reached within my 18 months of release date, I can still earn the
Yes,
time that I do the ETC, but I will not time that I earn will not get time off my sentence date, but on my release date, but I can use that to get home earlier, right?
Exactly. To get out of prison and back into the community. So they have to give you something already. According to the Second Chance Act, they should give you 12 months. But I think with a sentence that in the Bureau of Prison, I know it's very long for you, but in BOP's eyes, that's not very long. So that's why I don't think they're going to give you 12. I think they'll give you 6. And then I think that we can do better than 6 by participating in earned time credits and get out probably in 9 or 10, which when we take that down from like a 21-month sentence, you're probably going to do 11 months. And then if you do a little better than that, I think 7 to 8 is going to be the best possible scenario. Everything has to work in line. I think that it's realistic that we can get out in 10 to 11. I think the worst case is probably 13.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Joe.
Michael, I get sentenced on Wednesday the 14th. My website isn't live yet. You think I should have it live already?
I think that that's a better question for the guys who know a lot more about your case than I do. Like you should talk to Sam and Justin, and because I don't know. I'm sorry, but I'm just too busy in the prison stuff. I don't know, but I don't know. I don't see any reason not to go live, but sometimes it may piss off your lawyer, so you may want to wait. There's really no upside. Remember, this work is all iterative. I'm cool with you getting sentenced and then saying, I did all this work going forward because you're going to be able to use this to your advantage later. At least that's what I did. I did all this work and it helped me later.
My lawyer put it in the sentencing memo about my website. And I also wanted to know, why
not put it up there?
How do I get, when you Google search my name, how do I get my website on the first page, like on the top, so it can direct them there?
Let me walk you through that, okay? This is like saying, remember let's just say you're starting a restaurant. You can hire a contractor to build you the restaurant, okay? It doesn't mean people are going to come in there and buy all your food. To get it on the first page, you're going to have to write a lot of content, a massive amount. And there's a lot of ways. One way is to become a really good writer. And so because Google's going to do algorithms and they're going to search it. So if you wanted to come up, you've got to populate it with a lot of good content. The other option, of course, is you buy advertising and then Google will put it there for as long as you're paying. But it's just work, Joseph. And you just got to, I don't know, let's just take a look. Let me share my screen. Let me go to a Google sheet. Here's my screen. So let me pull this over here and open a new, I don't want to open this one. I want to open an incognito window. So let me stop sharing this one. Let's do it. Let's do an incognito window. Let me open that first on Chrome. So because otherwise it's going to read my searching patterns. So now
you mean content outside of my website I additionally have to do, or just keep putting content on my website?
Let me look here. There's an incognito screen, right? That means it's not looking at my browsing history, correct? Right? You understand that, right? Or do you not understand that? Okay. So if I type in my name, what comes up? Well, my name does come up first, but it's because I've published a massive amount of content. I mean, it's right over many, many years. So it's there. Let's type in your name because yours new, right? Joseph, how do I spell your last name?
DEGREGORIO.
Type it in. No,
right,
it doesn't come up yet. Okay.
Mine's right on the top.
Well, that's the press release,
right?
It may take many years or many dozens of pages to get up. What I would recommend you do think about, instead of your name, think about something you want to rank for. Okay. What's the name of your website?
It's myname.com.
Oh, that's a good website. Let me look up my friend Scott Laney.
Michael, I haven't done this since I got out.
But look at that. Right there at the top.
Oh, you're kidding. Come on.
Right there at the top.
That's great.
Okay?
It's above his USA versus
exactly.
Yep.
And the more you work at it, the better it gets. That's exactly what Justin was talking about, right? If you invest the time like Scott did, boom, he's number one. All right. So I mean, we're only telling you these are the tools that we think you should use. Somebody may disagree with me. I'm not God. I'm just a guy who did 26 years in prison. So I'm trying to show these are the strategies that I use. I'm trying to show you those strategies with hopes they can help you. So publish a lot, like Scott did, and I think you're going to control the narrative of your life. Okay.
I think I can help with Joe's question a little bit better too, because I do this for a living.
Oh, that's awesome, Paul. Thanks.
And I didn't know I could do this to help myself, so I'm going to start doing it now, just to help Joe a little better. Whether you use WordPress or GoDaddy.com, wherever you're making your website, every picture you upload on your website, every link that you put it on your website, you want to tag it to yourself, your name, or something related to you. And having one website helps a lot. If you put up 10 pictures, you want to tag those 10 pictures with something related to you, your name or something. But having multiple resources, printing or uploading your article helps too. So not just your website, but there are many free press release websites. Same thing, if you're uploading your blog on your website, you want to copy and paste to 10, 15 different freepressrelease.com kind of websites. So when you search your name on Google, not just your website, but all those 15 other press release websites will show up there too, pushing your negative links down with next pages.
So
thank you so much.
Yeah, it's an ongoing amount of work that we all have to do. But that's what I would think the website is. The website is a skeleton. It is a place for you to populate with new stuff so that you're going to redefine the next chapter of your life. And, the more you publish, the better off you're going to be. Okay. So I'm going to look, if anybody, I don't see any other hands up. Let me look through these massive amount of content questions. That's just great. We love this engagement, by the way. So let's see if I didn't, it'll be easier for me if I didn't answer your question. Could you just talk, unmute yourself and ask me the question? Yes, John.
Hey, Michael. I was just curious, does your daily job qualify for earned time credits?
It should, but it's going to be institution specific. So like Unicor, a job in the factory definitely does, because that's proven to be an evidence-based program that reduces recidivism. So working in Unicor does, but it's tough to get into Unicor with a short sentence. You've got a pretty good sentence length. You may be able to get into it. But you're going to have to find that kind of stuff out once you get there. I'm going to keep adding more stuff. We will obviously apprise you of that. We send newsletters into prison at least a couple of times a week on what we're learning. And soon, what part of the country do you live in?
South Florida.
So you're going to Miami or
Miami? Miami.
I don't have a relationship with Miami yet. I have a relationship with the North Central region, but I hope that by the end of this year, I would like to have our programs in Miami, because ours are you can listen to anytime and hopefully get access to earned time credits. But this is all evolving, Jonathan. It's going to continue to get more and more programs. I think that somebody going in now, they're in a much better position than when Scott got in. Although Scott got out. Well, Scott, you had a 48-month sentence, right?
I had 42. I was out 13 and a half. In regards, just to add on to what you said to Michael, your question with the First Step Act and the earned time credits, Michael raises a great point. It's different at every institution. For us, it was your job counts and you're going to have a job. Rdap counts. If you're enrolled in a class, it counts. We used to think, I take this class and it's 2 hours, one night a week, and it's 12 weeks long. No, it's if you were enrolled in a class. So you can't hide from earned time credits. They're going to find you. It's just, unfortunately, the people who have weapons charges and other things that preclude them from it, they're out of luck. So all of us need to be really grateful that this program exists, because I thought Rdap was great, but then you add in earned time credits, and we're really blessed because a lot of guys there don't qualify for the time off Rdap. They don't qualify for earned time credits. And I think Michael said this to me once, and I agree with it. Michael, don't let me misquote you if you didn't say this. There's never been a better time to go to prison
Yeah, well,
than right now.
I do say that because when I was in prison, there weren't these programs and you couldn't maneuver. I mean, it would have been unheard of to think a 48-month sentence I can get out in 13, 14, 15 months. But now that's possible. And, you know, when I'm talking with Victoria, as I was earlier, say 24 months, you're going to be out in 10 or 11. When I was in prison, if you had a 24-month sentence, you were going to do about probably 18, 19. So it's a big difference. It's way better. And I think it's going to continue to get better. And I'm going to fight to make it better. That's really a passion for me. But that's why
Follow-up question on the earned time credits. At the beginning of that statement that you read, it said that you did not have to be in a program, that it was like left up to somebody to decide if you qualify. What was that about?
in that document.
Yeah.
So let me read back to the document and see what I said.
I'm pretty sure at the beginning it said you did not. It didn't matter if you were in a program or not, or class, unless I interpreted that wrong.
Yeah,
I recall what you're saying.
Let me pull it up just so that I do, because I don't know what that means, what you're saying.
Okay.
So share.
I think I saw that too.
Okay.
Again, while Michael's looking at this,
that's the wrong one. Shoot.
I'll just say that this would not be one of the things I would be overly concerned about. You're going to get earned time credits within days after you start showing up. You'll begin accumulating them.
So what is the area here that you're talking about here?
I believe at the beginning you started reading it, and there was something that you actually said out loud about that you did not have to be in a class or participate in anything, that it was like up to someone to determine whether or not you get these credits or not.
Let's just read it, so then you can just stop me. Recently, the Bureau has launched the federal check. Okay, this is just telling you that, so they're going to start calculating it. Regardless of pattern, risk level, we state, and credits will be applied, consistent with the final rules, language, and implementing text. As a reminder, the unit team will determine an inmate's eligibility to earn FTCs based on the current conviction. So the unit team is going to
that makes sense.
Okay,
yep.
That's going to be based on a pattern score. The earning of FTCs is based on earning status, okay, and not participation. That means that you can participate in a course, but if you're not in the right earning status, you don't get any credits.
Makes sense. Okay, that's where I got confused.
Okay, inmates who refuse or fail to complete any portion of the needs assessment or refuse to decline any program recommended to address a specific identified need area is considered opted out and will not earn time credit. So, right, you've got to get to this status right here of being in earning status. That's the first step, and you can do that. Well, frankly, I don't know, because it is going to be institution specific. At Scott's place, it sounds like you got to be in earning status as soon as you got there. Is that right, Scott?
I would interpret earning status as
it means you've gone through the pattern score. You're satisfied as a low or a minimum. Correct. Entry, it's going to be earning status. It will show that on your computation sheet.
Who do you do this pattern score with? Where do you go do it?
As soon as you get there, you're going to have this kind of computer system, and you could take those surveys. Could you do it at Yankton, Scott?
I did.
So you get on that same place you send these emails, you'll do your pattern score, and you'll get it. You'll do it the second day you're there because you're really well prepared. Okay.
And is there, you just answer the questions honestly, and I'm assuming you land wherever you land?
It's very objective, right? So yeah, you can't fake it, but you could take a test on our website. We have a pattern score that you could just do it.
I think I did it. I was like a 0.
Yeah, that's a minimum. So that's fine. You're going to be fine. Just make sure that you get classified. And then in their Sentry, which is their database, they're going to mark you as eligible.
So what number makes you a low versus a minimum?
Oh, I'd have to go look at the pattern score again.
If you 11 or 12.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's
gotcha.
objective. It's objective. So you can see it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Because if you do, just unmute yourself and ask.
As a follow-up, Michael, when you say if you're working at Core Links or how about your regular job outside of Core Links, does that count too or no?
It's going to be institution specific. Where Scott was, it sounds like all jobs. Did all jobs, Scott, apply for earned time credits?
Yep, all jobs, almost all classes. Just again, it was everything.
So
Okay.
do you get double credit? Like if you're doing a job and you're okay.
The law is the law. It's 15 days per month. That's the law.
So you don't have to do a job if you're in a class then. Is that correct?
You pretty much everybody has to do a job.
Okay.
But that's why I'm a little confused, Scott. If every job gives you earned time credits in there, what benefit is there in participating in the classes?
Great question. I think the reason everyone still participated in the classes was 1, self-development, 2, it shows up on your team review with your case manager. They know you're using your time productively. And 3, there was a hope that someday you'd be able to double dip, which won't happen. But the big thing is you're judged on everything you do, and not participating in classes is even worse than the benefit of participating in them, right? So your case manager is happy when they see that you've been taking every class you can. You have the time. There's really no excuse. You will learn something and pick up a few things.
Okay. So yes,
Thank you.
I would also say that Scott just got out of prison, but this rule just came out, and they're probably assigning earned time credits to all jobs because there are not enough classes right now. They're still developing them, right?
Yeah.
That may change in 3 months, in 9 months. So you want to do everything you can, understanding, I'm in a tough bureaucracy. I got to do everything I can. So always be thinking, I got to avoid disciplinary infractions. I got to participate in FRP, and I've got to participate in every class and work and be courteous and all of these things. You guys are all making the biggest sale of your life. It's the sale that makes you a better candidate to get out early. And if you think like that, it should influence your decisions as you're going through there.
Why do they allow double dipping with Rdap and ETCs at the same time?
Because the First Step Act says, it's in the law, that these are in addition to any other program. So that's not double dipping. Rdap was passed by the 1994 Comprehensive Crime Control Act. That existed. Earned time is new law, but that's not double dipping because they're two different laws that apply together. But you're asking, can I get double dipping on earned time credits? No, it's 15 days a month. That's it.
Have you guys ever talked about how difficult it is to get through the Rdap program without getting thrown out?
Well, just be humble. Be humble. I'll tell you a funny story. It's in my book. One of my friends is a physician, and he was a business partner of mine too, but he was my friend in prison, and everybody called him Doc, super cordial guy, super smart. And naturally, people would defer to a guy like him because he's a prisoner and he's in prison and he's been a doctor for 40 years and a successful doctor. And he's in the Rdap class because he's in a drinking thing, whatever. But every time the people in the class, they'd ask him a question and they'd turn to my friend, to Doc, and they say, Doc, is that true? And he said, of course, that's horseshit. And he got thrown out of Rdap. And he had to do another year in prison. So use common sense. Don't fight the machine. The machine is the machine. Figure out how to work with the machine and get out of prison, and then join our team and help us change the machine.
Right. No, I'm just hearing that there's a lot of people get
It's very easy to get kicked out because they don't want you to get a year off of prison. So things like, well, it's just an extra apple, let me take it out of the chow hall, that could result in you spending another year in prison. Just own that. It's dangerous. Don't get in disciplinary problems. Be very circumspect with regard to the people you choose to hang around with, right? use your head, use all your critical thinking skills, use all the skills that it took for you to become successful in business. And because this is now your business, you've got to be the CEO of your life. And as the CEO of your life, you got to say, I'm going to get out of here as soon as I can. And that requires you just to be really disciplined and humble. And, you know, that's what we try to share with you on these webinars. Any other questions? All right. Hey, it's 10:30, 2-hour call. I hope you guys have a great weekend. I know that Justin's going to do this again tomorrow. I will be here again tomorrow, so we'll do this again tomorrow. But well, if not, well, I'll have more information after I interview these subject matter experts.
What time is the call tomorrow? Is it the same link?
It's always at 8:30 Pacific, 11:30.
Same link?
Yeah,
Same link?
and it'll be basically the same information. We do new ones every week.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, fellas. Bye-bye.